Welcome back, everyone. This is the final session of this dialogue, kind of a summary session, and a unique moment to see all faculty together on stage. We saw parts of them during the week, but now we can see all of them. Let's give them a big applause. Yeah. Thank you for your hard work, not only this week, but throughout the last year when we were preparing this dialogue. And I would like to invite Luc Stiers, member of the planning committee, to introduce this session. Luc.
Okay, well, welcome to the final session. I know it has been an incredibly rich set of ideas and questions and so on. And it's really impossible to summarize that in 5 minutes. Now, let me just say a few things. First of all, let us remind ourselves of what the main themes were of our meeting. And the first one was what is the potential of AI to alleviate suffering, promote equity and social harmony, and support flourishing on Earth. The second one was what are the risks AI poses to global health and well-being for work, education, politics, and climate action. And the third theme is what kinds of ethical qualities might and should human beings infuse into artificial forms of intelligence such that it avoids harmful effects and rather benefits the well-being of all on Earth. So we started from that as the major themes, and then this was kind of divided into a number of sessions. Well, you've all been there. The first one was about minds, more like the philosophical point of view. Then about disentanglement and meaningful relationships. The third session was about collective narratives and possible futures. Then we had a session on diversity and ethics. And finally, this morning, we had a session on education. Now, I think I just want to highlight 4 questions that I believe came up in all these sessions. And the first question is really, what is AI right now? What is doing, well, what can we do with it? Okay. The second is, what is the impact of its usage on us and on society? And so this is like questions about AI as it is now. But then we are interested in the future, and I think we all believe that the future can be made and has to be made by us. And so this meeting, I believe, to be very important to set out directions of possible futures for AI. And so there's first a question, what should AI do in the future? And then also, how can we get there? And let me kind of zoom in on each of these different topics a little bit. Now, I think for what AI does now, well, we've seen various examples for, chatbots. In this conference, of course, we have focused on those applications that are relevant to us as humans. Many AI conferences, they talk about, what AI can do for, I don't know, data science or analysis of data and things like that. I think the great thing of this meeting is that we have focused on topics that concern us as human beings. And then there are a couple of, you could say, warnings or, that I heard, which I think are worth repeating. Well, the first one is, of course, that we should not be carried away too much with the hype that's being created by public relations companies of the big companies. We should keep our head cool and take AI with the critical point of view. Then there was also the point, I think was made particularly by Sean Gallagher, that you could say is the Turing test fallacy, which is that there's a big difference between simulating something and actually being it. So if an AI says, a chatbot says, I feel compassion for you, well, these are words, right? And we should not be tricked into believing that that system then actually has compassion, feels compassion. The same thing with other things. So this is one point. Another one that Thupten Jinpa, I hope I pronounce all these names in the correct way, is that we have to be careful of our language. And that is a slippery slope when we start to use words that make sense in a human context and start applying them to language. Another point that was made about this is the techno-optimism, human pessimism. It's particularly Molly Crockett that made that point. We should not forget how great humans are. And they are way beyond what current machines can do, and I think for the foreseeable future. So this is one thing. And then also being careful about anthropomorphizing, it's a difficult word, that I think Emily brought up, which is to too much read into it, too much overinterpret actually the behavior of these systems. Now, another thing is, the second topic is what is the impact now? And of course, the impact is huge, right? And there's more of that coming. Jinpa talked about creating of a new reality of which we become part, whether we like it or not. I will. But a lot depends on us also in the sense of how far are we willing to go to play in that theater, you could say, that is being created by AI. And I think this point was also being made, when users of certain text or chatbot or whatever realize that it is AI, they change their attitude towards that. And so it's important that we have to keep on our toes, so to speak. Now then, in terms of impact also, at the moment, and several people pointed that out, is about the impact on young children, and children and young adults. This thing is thrown into the world, and we don't know about the effects on mental development. And so there has not been enough research. So we're all guinea pigs, and particularly in the case of our children or grandchildren, there needs to be much more care about this. Also, Sasha Lucioni, pointed out the use of resources, which is another major problem that so far everybody in the world was trying to save energy, and then you get this technology that's actually blowing up the whole thing. Then, now the final thing is about possible futures. And I think this is maybe the most interesting part of our gathering, actually. The word that I heard a lot is compassion. And as something that these systems do not have, and that's something to strive for. There's also another word was responsibility. With power comes responsibility. The point that we should have more transparency, more attention to values that Jason brought up, and also to give more leverage for educators. And Geshe Lodu Sangpo, said, use AI to connect, not to avoid. AI cannot love, but it can help us love better. Use AI for resolution, not for conflict. And use AI for inner growth, not for depletion. So this is my last sentence. So I think if there's a take-home message that I would suggest for this meeting, it is first of all that we can co-create the future, But of course, we have to get into action. It will not happen by itself. But in this room, we have people from many different areas, including people building AI. And so I think this, for me, is not the end point where we declare, the new Bible, so to speak, of AI, but is rather the beginning point. We're beginning to search for how we can have all these ideas that are present in Buddhist practices and cultures. I think they are a great source, and there were already suggestions that have been made also, but they are a great source for new ideas on how the technology can develop. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Luc. Thank you. Before diving into deeper questions from the audience that were submitted on paper in the box and maybe also live, we would like to invite several colleagues, friends of ours from the history of mind and life, and who are here with us, to also summarize what this event meant for them, what they learned, what questions they would pose now that we are soon ending this meeting. And the first of them is going to be Jack Kornfield, who is a board member of Mind and Life Institute, a dear friend, and who has a lot of wisdom to share. And I would like to invite you to come here, or you can stay over there.
Sure. Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you. It's kind of amazing to see you all sitting up here. It's like, the heart parliament of Mind and Life more. It's very inspiring. So thank you all. In Zen, they say there are only two things. You sit and you sweep the garden, and it doesn't matter how big the garden is. And so maybe sweeping the garden is you get quiet and then you feel the love that you have naturally for everything. This week, we concentrated more than anything on articulating the concerns that we have about AI, honestly, less on the possibilities. If you read the last teachings of the Buddha in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, he begins by talking about wise society. And he said, if people meet with respect for one another and listen to one another with respect, the society will flourish and not decline. If people care for the vulnerable in the society, the children, those who are ill, the elderly, the society will prosper and not decline. If people take the traditional teachings, the best of them, and don't forget them, the society will prosper and not decline. And if the community cares for the environment around, they will prosper and not decline. It's kind of a modern thing when I recite it, but it's universal and so forth. The point that's important about this, because we kind of know it intuitively, is this was followed up by, he said, how do you do it? And that was followed up by the teachings or practices of compassion, of mindfulness, of ethics, quite particularly, what is wise speech that's, conducive to bringing the best and not harming. These are all part of the path, if you will, to create a wise human society. And it kind of underlies what we're talking about. How do we get AI in some way to foster those values? Now, the path starts with intention. So I want to ask you 3 questions. Regarding AI, and let yourself kind of get quiet because these are contemplative questions. I think somewhere that word contemplation is written in our things here. So the first question is, concerning AI, what is your own best intention, your deepest intention, seeing that this is happening in the world? What is your intention, your best intention in relating to AI? Then a second question, you could write these down later because it's helpful to actually write them and reflect on. The second question, is what is, out of this whole dialogue, what is one important action that you can commit to further this intention? What's the best action? What can you commit to further what you've learned from one another? Now we're sweeping. And then the third, I have one more minute, but you have to understand, Gabor, that when you get a teacher up here, it's really, you need a hook to get them off stage. The last thing is to ask you to turn to the person next to you and tell your neighbor, what is the thing that you want to commit to? And we have 1 minute to do it, because giving voice to it gives it a greater power. Okay, kids,
The person next to me.
go for it.
Let me turn this off.
1 minute. Okay, finish up. You can continue this with your new best friend later. The last thing to say, the last sentence is, things feel overwhelming at times in the world. Climate change, AI, divisiveness. The work of the Bodhisattva, and I will invite you to sense yourself as that, is to reach out and mend the place that you can touch, to reach out and bring something beautiful to what you can touch. So I thank you.
The next speaker will be Richard Davidson, Chief Scientific Officer of Mind and Life Institute. Richie, you can come to me. I'm going to give you the mic.
I have.
You have one?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you. So I first want to express my gratitude to all of you. This was honestly a better meeting than I expected it to be. And it was really wonderful. I want to congratulate the organizers. And I think you guys did a wonderful job. So, and Gabor, thank you so much. And so I appreciate this opportunity, and I want to talk about 5 things very briefly. So each will be about a minute. The first is when we had dialogues with His Holiness, the first thing he would ask us is, what is your motivation? And the motivation, I think, that I'd like to put on the table is not just about harm reduction. And we've heard a lot about harm reduction. We've heard less about increasing human flourishing. And I think this is something that we need to have center stage on the agenda. That's the first point. The second is that we've heard terrific and extremely nuanced and rich, and Luke's comments at the end reinforce this, the emergence of AI in the form that it has taken has helped us to sharpen our appreciation of the preciousness of human life, what it means to be distinctly human. Sean brought up the beautiful example of touch, which I think about a lot. And also, anyone who's been in the presence of His Holiness knows that touch is really important to His Holiness. And so I think that it is really important that we commit to reflecting on the preciousness of human life every day. And that will be helpful. Another aspect of the preciousness of human life is that humans really are the only entity on the planet that's capable of transforming itself in the ways that we talk about. And so that's another aspect of the preciousness of human life. The third point I want to make takes off from, I think it was a point that Sean also made about, or someone made about, the capturing of our attention. And I want to recite for you a very famous passage from a book that was published in 1890 that was written by William James. And he has a whole chapter on attention. And he said, the faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. And then he went on to say that an education which should improve this faculty would be the education par excellence. But it is easier to define this ideal than to give practical considerations for bringing it about. That was in the chapter on attention. And I think that there are a lot of people in this room who know something about the regulation of attention and who I think have the conviction based on hard-nosed both scientific data and experiential data that this is something that we could do. And so I think that we have a moral obligation to teach to educate our children and beyond in attention so that we can not be so hijacked by the information that we are all overloaded with, for which none of us have provided our informed consent for receiving. And I think that this is something that I'll say more about in the last point. So, actually in the next point, which is really a point I made in a comment in the first day, and that is educating for digital hygiene. One of the things that His Holiness goes back to over and over again is the importance of education. And I think that it would be really wonderful for us to take on this challenge of educating for digital hygiene. The fact is that these devices and these features and AI and all that it is associated with is not going to go away. And so we need to figure out how to change our relationship with it. And that really is in the realm of education. And I think that we can collectively, there are people in the room who have the expertise to devise a curriculum for digital hygiene. We got to do it. And the very future of humanity is really dependent on this kind of enterprise. And finally, the last point I want to make is inspired by His Holiness's reminder to us all the time that there are 8 billion people on the planet, and each of us has the capacity to flourish. We all have Buddhahood that is part of our innate capacity. And if we want to scale human flourishing, we've got to use technology. If anyone here has an idea for scaling human flourishing to 8 billion people that doesn't involve technology, please come see me. I would love to hear your thoughts. But technology and AI are not the same thing. And I think that we need to harness the power of technology for scaling. And I think this is really an urgent challenge. And one of the key components of this challenge, where AI can actually play a constructive role, is to figure out what strategies, even if we restrict them to strategies within the contemplative world, of which there are just hundreds of strategies, which strategies and which combination of strategies are most effective for which kinds of people. We don't know the answer to that question. And that is a tractable question. And for those of you who have explored contemplative traditions and practices. I think most people know from personal experience, you try things and some things resonate with you, other things don't resonate with you. Often when I'm asked what's the best form of meditation to do, I often say it's the form of meditation that you actually do. But how to figure that out is going to be complicated. This is where AI can actually play a useful role. And so we need to harness that power of technology. So thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Really, thanks. Now I would like to invite Laurie Anderson, performance artist, dear friend, to share a couple of words, how you felt.
How about now? That's good. Okay. I'm an audio professional. Yes. I want to just focus on, try to compress things into three categories. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you so much for your wonderful insights. It's been, I've been just scribbling away in this book for a while, just thinking like, but how does love work with this? And how does the darkness work? And so I'm going to say three different things. The first is I want to talk about joy, and second, attention, and the third one is the dark part of this. So maybe that's not quite the right order, but first of all, I'm an artist I work with digital technology, and I have for 50 years, really. We didn't call it AI when we started working with music that way. And then right before the pandemic, I was asked to come to Australia to work with at the Machine Learning Institute. And they said, okay, this is the largest supercomputer for language in the world. You're the artist in residence. What would you like it to do? I said, it's a supercomputer. Can't it figure out its own projects? Does it need me to give it some prompts? And so I thought, well, what I would really like to do is teach this supercomputer to read the Bible. Everyone's always banging on the Bible, saying the Bible says this, the Bible says that. What does it say? So we use the three streams of language that come in to make the Bible: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. And you could, by using faders, control the amounts of the languages. So the question was, if, let's say, you have a lot of Greek, will the book seem more rational? If you increase the amount of Hebrew, would it seem more mystical? The results were pretty inconclusive, I have to say. But what they did after that was they put everything that I've ever written or recorded or said in whatever context into this supercomputer, and they crossed it with the Bible. And they sent me a 9,000-page book, the Bible according to me. A nightmare, you can imagine. This is what a horror. So there it is. I'm telling you with great confidence about the creation of the world, the dominion of man over animals, the fiery end in Revelation. So anyway, it was I learned a lot about trying to find where the roots are of language and stories. Stories is what I do, so I was trying to pay attention to that. Of course, the second thing I want to talk about is attention. And when you drill down and try to find what the story is in a text or in a book or in a huge database of information. I want to say one more thing about the Bible. One of the futures of AI, I think, is, can you imagine if everything that you've ever written was available to you? It's not chat box, it's trained on you. So this is a very handy thing to have. And that's one of the futures of AI that I think is exciting. Not that you're then in your own little bubble, but it does mean that you can work with these algorithms as a partner. I basically do all my work with this technology, but I do want to quote one of my teachers, Akinchino Weber, who is quoting a cryptologist who says, and this applies to AI as well, if you think technology will solve your problems, you don't understand technology, and you don't understand your problems. So one of the other things that he said about attention, which I really appreciate, and he's a Swiss teacher, so he said, instead of thinking of your mind as a clear sky, think of it as a little lake. That's a little Swiss lake, since he's Swiss, And he said, and your thoughts are sailboats, and you watch them come by, you You note it, you let it go. You don't get attached. Here comes another sailboat, like a cloud. There it goes. And he took another step after that. He said, okay, now imagine, what is the wind that is blowing that boat? Is it a soft summer breeze, or is it a fierce winter wind? Where do your thoughts come from? What is the engine of your thoughts? And so I appreciate that in terms of trying to figure out what the engines are here of what we're talking about. In listening to all of you raise these other questions about what does love have to do with this, and also the darkness of this technology, I want to say just two things. One is that in thinking of love, I was recently asked to present a 2-hour talk in Vienna in a big festival about of literature, dance, theater, and music, about the rise of fascism in Europe. And so they said, we want you to give a 2-hour talk about the relationship of government and love. I thought, whoa, this is, first of all, why are they asking an American? Well, we have some recent experience. And so I thought and thought, and then I tried to draw on my fellow Americans. Oh, time is up. Okay, I'm just going to say one last thing then. That I was very privileged to cite a wonderful American, Cornel West, who said, justice is what love looks like in public. So I think this is one of the things that we might be thinking about as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you so much. And finally, I would like to invite Andreas Röpstorff, a member of the board at Mind and Life Europe, to share your summary.
Thank you very much, Gabor. Thank you, obviously, to all the speakers. But first of all, a warm thanks to all the people here locally in Dharamshala that has made this event possible. Not just because it has created for us amazing experiences, but there is also something in the way that things have worked out here that I think is really important for the kind of thinking we have been doing. And I'll be returning to that again in the end. So this is a moment of reflection. I work with some wonderful people at Harvard, Project Zero, and they have a small exercise in reflection. They say, whenever you have learned something, you should ask yourself the question, I used to think, now I think. And before I came here, I used to think that I sort of knew what minds were. I sort of knew what artificial intelligence were. I sort of knew what ethics were. And I sort of knew also how this frame could work out. And now I think that all of them are actually much more complicated in ways that I hadn't quite anticipated. They're still useful. But for me, they have been like koans, slightly dissolving as I've been looking up on that kind of board up there and suddenly realizing I didn't know what they meant. The first one that became problematized was intelligence when Jack added an S to it. Maybe it's intelligences, maybe it's not artificial, maybe it's synthetic. And at some point we ended up to say we shouldn't talk of artificial intelligence, but of some kind of hallucinogenic associative machine automaton. That sounds as a cool thing to have fun with, but maybe not to make decisions. And that's, I think, a critical part of what we learn from artificial intelligence. Similarly, with the minds, obviously a complicated problem, but I think we got some very precise pointers of it. So first of all, shifting it from being something that's in the brain to something that's embodied, embedded, extended, and enacted. We knew that, at least from where I come from. But it was also clear from some of the Buddhist presentations that we shouldn't forget the intentionality, the reflexivity, and the subjectivity that suddenly opens up minds to a completely different domain. And again, I think Jack's contemplative exercise was a really interesting exercise in seeing yourself in the eyes of another. That's subjective, it's reflexive, it's intentional, and it's deeply experiential. And that's a very different idea of mind from thinking of mind as a computational process. And finally, the ethics. I might have come here thinking of ethics as rule-bound. And I guess what we go away with is that notion of ethics as being about compassion. And what does compassion entail? Well, by its very nature, compassion is perspectival. You cannot talk about compassion without talking about it from the perspective of the other. And I think what became clear here, and also at the museum yesterday, is that this perspective isn't just a here and now perspective, it's also temporal. It's also about seeing a past and seeing a future and seeing possible pasts and futures. So, mine's artificial intelligence, I used to think I knew what it meant. Now I think it's really complicated, but I have some interesting pointers. Thanks for that. I think we got some new ideas on the table. This notion of narratives kept emerging again and again and again. It was pointed out, I think, by Luc and others, that there is a tendency to see AI as a monotheistic God. It sees all, it knows all, it can act on everything, and it renders us someone who sees nothing, knows nothing, and are unable to act. And that idea got dissolved in all sorts of really interesting ways as it developed. I think a kind of AI that we see emerging is a very different narrative. It may be at times hallucinogenic, but it seems also to have powerful abilities. When it is precisely perspectival, it's situated in a particular place. When we acknowledge that the machines and even the kind of chatbots that we know, that they are multiply polyphonic, you can have them speak in so many different ways. And that's one of the things that are interesting about them. And they're inherently local. So the kind of narrative we see is not the monotheistic God or AI. It's one that's local, perspectival, polyphonic. And that kind of resonates pretty well with, I think, also the environment we are in here. So that, I think, what I heard us discuss. But there were a couple of things that were present in the room that we maybe didn't really get to discuss as much as I would have hoped for. So in the mind and life, there is mind. We covered that a lot. But we didn't discuss the life part quite as much. So what does life mean? If we talk about sentient beings, then it's the being part of the sentient. And being means something like having a history and being a history. It means metabolizing, being in exchange with an environment. It means reproducing. It means dying and caring. Those aspects of mind and life, I think, we didn't really cover them, and yet they were so much present. And that returns me back to the thanks, because it seems that by, in a sense, inviting us into aspects of your life world in many different ways and forms, you created a very strong resonance for making those aspects of life, so to say, co-present during it. So thanks for that, because that to me has really shaped how I will think about artificial life in the future. The other thing that I think was in the room that we didn't really get to talk about, well, Susan mentioned it the first day. She said, there are 3 pillars to mind and life. It's the researchers, it's the contemplatives, and we have all of them on stage. And some of you are both researchers and contemplatives in really interesting kind of constellations. That's a beautiful thing. But the third thing were the entrepreneurs, or the makers, or the doers, or the creators that are present in the room and is, I think, an integral part of this strange organization that brought us here in the first place. But I don't really think we created a space where that voice could be heard as well. So maybe this is something to think from in the future. How do we bring the life into the mind? And how do we also think about those people who get things done? Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas, and thank you all for your extensive summaries and wonderful, deep, heartfelt sharings. It was really nice to hear you all. Before handing back the mic to Luc, as facilitator of this session, and all the faculty members who are going to share their own reflections and summaries, I would like to just highlight the questions that were posted in the box and what those questions are. And if you recognize them, please, everyone, thank those who have submitted these questions. Some of them might not be readable by me. I may ask the actual presenter to ask the question. But I would like to start with a question that was raised by a student from the Tibetan Children's Village. Would you like to ask your question, or shall I read it? Yes. If AI robots will do all our work, then what we will do? What is our role? Who would like to answer that? Maybe Luke. Yes, Emily.
Thank you so much for this question. I think part of the answer is maybe that won't come to pass. But also, even if it does, I think if we take a broad sense of work, there's work that you do to make money, but there's also work that you do to contribute to your community. And I think that that will always be our work.
Another question. Very interesting. Who actually need AI and why? Is it really needed?
Maybe those who are closer to the actual AI technology might have to answer.
Who actually need AI?
I'll offer an answer that may not be the answer you're expecting, but I just want to say that's a really good question. And it's one that we should continue to ask, especially while thinking about what kind of AI we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think also, to some extent, AI was also developed to, think about as a tool to think about the mind, and by constructing it and seeing how it behaves to try to better understand it. So actually, I would argue that that is actually necessary, or at least helpful. But then how it is used sometimes, maybe we don't need as much.
Yes. And then there were several questions asked in relation to our Buddhist perspective, what we are sharing here, what we are exploring here. So Marika's question, can the practices from Buddhist tradition help people recognize the illusory nature of LLM systems or enhance critical thinking about the outputs of LLMs?
Yeah, I think then maybe
monastics can follow up on this. The challenge of catching hallucination is that the fact that you catch something as hallucination presupposes you know the truth. That's a big problem, and this is a big problem even in Buddhist philosophy. They say that in order to understand something to be illusory, you have to understand the reality. So that's a big, so I think the effort should be made more at the level of critical thinking perspective rather than trying to get to the reality. Because in order to get to the reality, you need so much information that is probably time, from a time point of view, not too efficient to ask. Whereas if you develop a faculty right from the beginning to be kind of vigilant, and as we say in English, take it with a pinch of salt, so that not everything that is there is obvious. I think that might be a smarter strategy, because one of the things, illusions about AI is the promise of speed. And there is speed, that's for sure. I've used LLM chat GPT for editing because English is not my first language, and I often use copy editors, which takes time, like Anichayala was talking about, and then your friends don't have the time, so on and so forth. So I've started to use, and the editing speed is pretty impressive, especially if you give the right parameters. Say, these are my books, keep the same tone, don't embellish, just keep the language precise. It does a very good job. So so the speed is very seductive. So I think whatever faculty we bring as a kind of a moderating factor has to be also quite time efficient. That's my feeling. Yeah.
I'd like maybe to add one element. I think in mindfulness-based program, a very important learning element is the capacity to develop metacognitive awareness of thoughts as thoughts and not thinking that thoughts are facts. So I think that capacity in the digital age will be absolutely vital, especially when we use LLMs. So they can really enhance our understanding. Their power of categorization, which is like Vitalka and Vichara, in Buddhist philosophy, is very, very important. But we need this larger space so that we don't get caught up. And I think that something that I'm going to talk a little bit after is the state of cognitive warfare, of propaganda. So now this skill of seeing thoughts as thoughts, not as facts, is hugely important, not to buy propaganda, not to be manipulated. So I think that is a skill that we need to include at the center of this new type of curricula of digital hygiene or digital ethics. Yeah.
Another question related to Buddhist views. According to Buddhist Abhidharma, beings come into physical existence in four main ways: womb-born, egg-born, moisture-born, spontaneously born. If that is so, could AI be considered a form of spontaneous birth, arising from karmic causes? The question is, can there be a middle ground between science and Buddhism regarding whether AI can possess consciousness?
I would like it.
I will try to. So we talk about it's a very interesting to me the AI since beginning. I understood the question is, can machine think? It's in the 50s, but what to me is before machine become conscious. One thing is the machine is the mind is the kind of like product of the pure like physical things. And before that, we have to think about the cell is pure, the chemicals. And I think we would expect that inorganic to become organic should fast. So like we had lots of discussion with the scientists, whether bacteria or cell or sentient being or not. I will tell you, maybe it's a story. There's one American become monks, monasteries. And then the teacher tells the basic rule is don't kill these things. One day he gets sick, and then teacher asked shall I take to the drug, the antibiotic? And the teacher was confused because we have no idea about the modern medicine works. But he thinks the bacteria is sentient, and that will kill, and maybe I shouldn't take to the kill. If I eat to the medicine, then thousands of the sentient beings will killed. So in that sense, we have whether it's a cell itself is a sentient being or not. So this is the question. If the pure chemical productions, I would expect AI can be done to so many things very quickly to all of possible combination of the chemical, and that could write time. That should expect to real the biological that's come from before some sort of like sentence, something like that. So regarding to the Buddhist perspective, for kind of that is one way we can think about how we become conscious in the first place, when we become conscious. This is so many things. In terms of me, a philosopher, so much interesting questions. When we become first conscious, especially the recent, the couple experiment, that's when the cell already formed, during the division part, when you take two, the divided, both become sentient. So then when it's in the become conscious, it's more complicated. So it's very interesting, but I cannot answer. I just make more doubt for philosophies. That's the philosophy's job. Who's told that? Yeah.
Anyone else?
So whether AI is a kind of spontaneous being or not, I think it comes to whether it can have a consciousness or not. From the Buddhist perspective, the consciousness is the kind of fundamental sort of constituents that make living beings sentient, then I have been actually thinking, quite a lot whether AI can have a consciousness or not. Because, when we look at the different species, they have different kind of, the psychophysiological kind of, the aggregates. And the bacteria, as Geshe Thöpke said, it doesn't have any kind of, nerves to experience. But still, we consider it as a kind of sentient being. And then I was thinking, like, as long as the medium, to get the consciousness is kind of, suitable, then why AI cannot have some kind of a consciousness? Why AI cannot be some kind of sentient being? Because as long AI become pretty much like other sort of creatures or species, having different kind of psychophysiological sort of aggregates, and at one point it may become a medium to be. It can be become some sort of vessel that is compatible to possess consciousness. Then if AI possesses consciousness, Buddhist point of view, then it is sentient. Then it's a living being. So from that perspective, philosophically a little bit understandable, but on the very pragmatic sort of, point of view, it is very hard to, digest.
Kate, please, yes.
I was going to say, I like the focus on this idea of the spontaneous birth, because I think that is the most interesting sort of form. For me, that's the most interesting form of life to think about, is how does life spontaneously organize? And when you look at the science of that, the questions that are being asked by people who are looking at the origins of life, they're very much questions about the thermodynamics of the kind of materials that can organize in this way. It's a very physically grounded question. And the properties that you look for in these kind of self-organizing systems are in many ways very, very different from what you find in the physical stuff that these kind of AI systems are implemented on, in a way that I think gives us a way of saying that they lack spontaneity, that isn't just a notion of spontaneity that is perhaps too tied to these kind of quite hidebound philosophical questions about freedom of the will. And I think that's a very important, different perspective on, because spontaneity is very important in intelligence. I mean, I'm a big fan of Kant, and for Kant, spontaneity, you can't have intelligence without an element of spontaneity. Kant was very anthropocentric, so his notion of spontaneity is very problematic. But I think there are much more powerful notions of spontaneity that you can get from looking at, I guess, the physics and the thermodynamics of life that have a really important perspective on what is different about these kind of systems, that I would love to be more a part of these conversations.
Similar question, actually, about the free will. Do you fear that if we are able to program free will into AI models, they would be able to learn and get experience just as us humans? I'm asking this since we seem to think that interactions with AI, which involves teaching us something or having empathy for us, is not genuine. If the AI models get some experience as us, will the real connection that we seek come from them, AIs also? It's from Tenzin Tsega, the Dalai Lama Library and Archive. Thank you for your question.
Maybe the philosophers want to take this one.
Okay, so unfortunately, the philosopher will say, I have the question, what do we mean by free will?
That is what was.
And there are traditional views of free will that says, oh, an individual person has free will as an individual. But there are more recent discussions that emphasize the social nature of autonomy, kind of a relational autonomy. Feminist theorists actually have a lot to say about this. And I think if we think of autonomy or relational autonomy rather than free will, then it seems difficult to think of an artificial system unless you can somehow rather think of an artificial system as part of a social system. And I'm not quite sure how to do that.
But with regards to learning from interactions, we haven't really talked about this, but one of the major contributors to this magic of large language models. So because taking a couple of steps back, large language models have existed before ChatGPT became such a big phenomena. And one of the contributors to this kind of leap in terms of performance was a technique called reinforcement learning from human feedback. And essentially, it's after you've trained a model on a lot of text from the internet, for example, you make copies of the model, you get copies of the model and you get humans to interact with them and essentially improve the output. So ask them questions and then fix the output or rank the output, and it gets put back into the model and the model gets better and better and better. And this is done on a rather impressive scale, like tens of thousands of people. And, you can get mathematicians to improve the math and chemists to improve the chemistry. And then this is a core part of the way that large language models are currently trained. And this is major part of the reason why they're so good. And so, I'm not a philosopher, but I think that interaction is already a core part of artificial intelligence, machine learning anyway. You're a philosopher.
I really like the interaction, the emphasis on that element. I also think a really important thing about the notion of autonomy, as Kant would have described it, just to go back to is this idea of it's a self-given law. And that's a very different way of thinking about freedom. That's not, it's not a question of is it random, is it determined? It's what is it to give a law to yourself? And I think that's a very interesting way of thinking about what these systems are doing, because to me, it looks like there's a lot of reasons to say that they are not giving the laws to themselves. They're very dependent on the particular objective function that somebody has programmed for it, the particular reinforcement process, the structure of the data that's given to them. What would it mean for these sorts of systems to give laws to themselves? I find that quite a helpful framing for these kinds of questions.
Thank you. We are going to ask some questions related to education policy-making systems. So a bit turning away from the philosophical and the Buddhist side of things. Question about education. What do children need in order to participate in the creative struggle toward discovery that the Tibetan practice of debate offers to critical thinking? How could we teach into this practice? So it's a question related to Tibetan debate education.
The question is how to teach to the monastic debate to the children, right? So obviously the two things needed. One thing is obviously medium change to the languages. There's no way to everybody speaking Tibetan, although I really wish it. So we need to translate, but it's very hard. Lots of Tibetan texts already translated, early 60s, 70s, Genji Mullah knows, almost many of them translated, whether it's fully good or not. But it's one of the hardest things people find is how to debate system to translate. And not only the translate, also fluidity how to come to. Takes time to, adaptations. And maybe the others maybe more said about that. Italian, maybe they already coming soon to maybe Chiara say more about that. So this is the problem. Other things we have to change to the subject, because all the subject is something, the impermanent or emptiness is what to do in the other schools. So we try to, one of the techniques is to use symbol cell and what is the life, and we need to change to the subject. Like physics may be good, or the origin of universe and these things. So we need to really need to the language, and then some of them I really appreciate that Chiara maybe more share about that. People already taking to the different languages, so how it goes. So that's I think is really needed. So I can share.
The Tibetan debate tradition is my own background as well. That was the primary medium of education, spending at least 1.5 hours in the morning session and 2 to 3 hours in the evening. So every day we spend roughly about 4 hours in the debating courtyard. Geshe Thapkela is referring to the challenge of language because the debate is structured in such a way that in order for the efficiency of communication, it's a kind of a structured discourse where the person who's answering has either says, I agree, or why, which means questioning, or there is no logical entailment. So there are structured responses. There are only 4 responses which can be given. And then, if the response is why, then the person who's asking the question will come up with a reasoning as to why. And if the person says yes, then the task of the debater is to come up with a counterexample. So the economy of the language is partly crucial. I mean, not partly. It's crucial to the clarity of the process, so that you are not shouting at each other or opposite each other. So, but translating that language into modern language is a huge challenge. And then the other point Gisela is saying is that you can't just translate the debating text because the contents that are used in the debating text are very Buddhist. So you need to apply it on a different kind of content, whether it's physics or biology or something. So those are the 2 challenges Gisela is pointing out. I'm just helping to translate for him.
Geshe Thapkela said that, the content part. Emory Tibetan Science Initiative actually has been, initiating some kind of, debate on the scientific kind of, the contents. We have been recently debating on such as, evolution, on cell. And then also we have had a debate on, the different kind of systems or the biologic kind of systems. So since the scientific term has, most of, respect to this kind of, the field has been already translated in Tibetan, and we have been, debating on that. The primary reason behind that, this is, to, give us some kind of, examples or the, inspiration to the young Tibetan lay people who are studying in the kind of, the TCB, like TCB school. So, they can watch and they can bring the debate kind of, the logic to study science. So that has been going on, and maybe, we can, if the language barrier, got improved, maybe we can do it in other contexts as well.
Now, yes, one more, please. Yes.
Maybe just adding one more project on that in this direction. So thanks to a wonderful collaboration also with the monasteries, with Mindlife Europe and so on, we are running a project, which is a long-term project on Tibetan, Nalanda-style Tibetan debate in 2 different languages, Italian and English. It's an online one. It's not for kids now, but who knows in the future. And so my answer will be it's a work in progress, actually, and we have to collaborate all together, researching on it and trying to implement it. And we have been brainstorming about how to apply this very technique or way of thinking, actually, of inquiring reality into different topics, also secular ones, and also to universities and higher eds contexts and so on. So it's a work in progress, a collaborative work in progress.
So now we are getting.
And maybe if I
Yes,
can add,
yes, Marika.
Sorry, one tiny thing that I think is important is I've also been lucky to learn a little bit from some Western monks about this debate, and I found it incredibly useful to clarify my thinking on what do we even mean with mind wandering or mindfulness, the kind of things that I'm an expert on. Where I found it to be challenging is actually in many cases in our education in the West, we don't tend to learn very detailed like definitions and and sort of a lot of details. We sort of roughly know what we're talking about, but then in the debate, it's kind of useless. You don't know enough details to actually have a reasonable debate. So I think this is another thing where we need more thoughts.
More difficult questions, 3 or 4, and then we are going to end this part. If you were to envision some sort of regulatory body that would embody a set of values and have a specific mission to help regulate the future of AI, what would that look like? Merve.
As the only policy person, regulation person, I'll take it. There's actually a conversation about this at United Nations level. For the last few years, we've been talking about Global Digital Compact and whether there should be a global governance of AI, and whether there should be a single body that should do that. And United Nations, for better or worse, there are a lot of conversations saying like whether that should be a UN body. But there's also a counter argument that maybe that would give too much power to a single body that has it all. And we have some of those. We have an example, for example, with the Security Council in United Nations, right? So you have all of the countries represented, and then there's a smaller group of countries that have the veto power and the final decision power, which creates very problematic conditions for one way or another for certain communities. So there is the realpolitik, as much as we want to embed good values like compassion or diverse values, whatever it is that we want to embed, there is the realpolitik of that being politicized. So I think right now the conversation is about a scientific panel. It was just deployed at the United Nations level. There is a international independent scientific panel that would provide those independent expertise. And in fact, there's 10 more days to apply for anyone, monastics or anyone in the room that you think is relevant. They're still taking applications into that. So that might be one way of reflecting those values rather than a regulatory approach.
Anyone else would like to answer to this question? Maybe Yasun.
Yes, thank you so much. So I believe part of the question was about the common underlying values that we could potentially try to unlock through regulation. And as Merve demonstrated, when we start with policy, things look intractable and what you see is different. But I think that a lot of our conversations this week have pointed to actually very extensive common ground and values that we would want to unlock together, starting with the requirement that AI risk be contained and that we have safe systems, but also extending to human control and understanding of these systems, and eventually to ways of unlocking common benefit. And I'm not sure where this has gotten to at the granular policy level, but I am encouraged to see a lot more discussion of benefit sharing. I think this is a new conversation that is taking shape now at the international level, and I think it's a very important one.
Thank you. A similar question, taking it, Sasha, you wanted, no. Considering the ecosystem, economy, politics, social, etc., in which AI systems and the technology were created, where exactly should the seeds of ethics and values be best and most efficiently planted, and how? Marie?
Very short before you. Okay, I'll just share with what I share with my students. We talk about the diversity of humanity, diversity of humans, but we as individuals are also diverse. It's not only because we are not only policy advisors, we are not only philosophers, we are not only academics. Like at any given time, you're a citizen, you're a migrant, you're a parent, you take care of your own parents, you're a consumer, etc. So I think there's benefit to start anywhere that you can. and pick your collective action, like where you want to make, what is it that is most important to you and where you think you can contribute with your intention, and take it from there.
This makes me think of a paper I recently worked on where we looked at ethical principles, ethical frameworks, and how they're put into practice. And essentially we found that there are lots of sets of principles, there are lots of frameworks, they're all very well-intentioned, things like, unbiased, sustainable AI, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to the way people practice AI, there's the fabulous work of actually Dr. Abeba Burhan, who was here at the last Mind and Life gathering, last dialogue, where they analyzed, her and her group analyzed the values that were put into practice in AI research. And it was really interesting because things like sustainability, efficiency, morality, ethics tended to be at the bottom of the list. And the first values were things like novelty and, beating previous work, accuracy, performance, things like that. And so it's interesting in this paper we looked at, we do have great intentions, but when it comes to putting them in practice, it doesn't always work. And I think that what's needed are gatherings like this one, where people who maybe work on more the philosophical or ethical side of things meet people who develop the systems, meet people who have companies who put the systems into practice, and by achieving some form of common language and common discussion, we can actually figure out how do no harm or ethical or unbiased translates into deploying a system in a startup or an organization. I think that's the transversal links that's what's often missing.
Can I add a little bit?
Yes, Emily, please.
I think oftentimes the thing that interrupts between good intentions and practice is the profit motive. And I think that what everyone's saying here is a really important starting point. These conversations are important. As Merve said, we all have many roles. But I think also if we are going to overcome the forces of the profit motive, we're going to have to do a lot of working together in solidarity as workers and as community members. So that as community members, that's passing regulation. It's also standing up to interrupt processes that are harmful and standing up for each other.
Thank you. There is a question to Luke Steels that I cannot read. Is the person who wrote this question in the room? Do you remember anyone asking a question from Luke Steels? That's fine. Finally, there are two longer questions, comments, proposals made that I think would relate to how we are going to go forward from here, which is always important to consider, of course. So, the first one is really appreciate the power of meaningful debate that is getting to what is right. In that spirit, it would be beneficial to hear more from Anil about the perspective, personal point of views he began to articulate. The energy plus engagement in the room went up considerably when he spoke. It would be great to find time in the remaining days to make space for this. As we had a full schedule and the program planned, with an extensive faculty, we could not really give space to you, Anil, in that sense, what this question and request refer to. But I'm sure that coming out of this meeting, Mind and Life Institute and Mind and Life Europe, and the proposal that Suzanne made before the lunch break, that we should start focusing on actions. Also what Andreas Ropsdorff mentioned, that we did not really have the chance to include the entrepreneurs' perspectives in the dialogue at this point in time, because we were looking for the questions and interpretations and the philosophical underpinnings of the basic problems here. I'm sure the next natural step would be to include this perspective in a similar dialogical format and focus only on that, or develop the dialogue further. But if anyone, I'm not sure, I can't speak on your behalf, Anil, but if anyone would like to have more discussions with you and learn from you and hear you, you might be available still later this day for that. I know, but others needed and others requested that. Yes, thank you. And the other one is, how might Mind and Life structure or experiment with different types of convenings that would make visible the cutting-edge AI plus pose critical research questions associated with it? What would we want to know, research, if AI platforms emerge that are non-extractive, can respect data sovereignty, plus do not depend on massive amounts of data or compute, how could such platforms be used to promote human flourishing? So it's a complex question. It had an idea that we should structure and experiment with different types of convenings in the future related to the previous proposal, which we would definitely need to do. And the second was a more complex question that I could repeat if you wish, but if you can answer any of you, I would appreciate that. And this is the last question. Can I repeat? What would we want to know, research, if AI platforms emerge that are not extractive, can respect data sovereignty, plus do not depend on massive amounts of data or compute? How could such platforms be used to promote human flourishing, going back to Rich's point that he raised about human flourishing? Is the person in the room who asked this question would like to? Yes? Would like to make it more explicit?
I think it was a very clear question. I think we just we all struggle because it's a complicated one. But the thing I wanted to draw attention to is it also came up with the question who asked for AI and what is it for? There's often this interesting nuance between specific systems being useful and this idea that we need to build very general forms of intelligence. So what I took your question to be driving at was maybe there's something more specific, more local, more appropriate to a specific problem, and what would that look like? And there are many things that come to mind in that regard. So for example, you can use artificial intelligence to do much more effective climate modeling, which is really helpful for farmers. You can use artificial intelligence to advance scientific inquiry, and there's been, I'd say at this point, innumerable breakthroughs in that regard. And I think we've also often spoken in the context of this conference about AI for education and specific pedagogical tools that could be built and developed, as well as, of course, specific forms of AI artifact that are geared towards Tibetan culture and the wisdom of these contemplative practices. So in that discussion, I've seen elements of futures that speak to all these questions.
And also, it's worth thinking about, and Dr. Bender brought this up, of the organizations that are currently building the systems are arguably general purpose organizations. So for example, you never know what someone's going to throw at ChatGPT or Google, or, you know, there's value to these tools being as broad as possible, whether it's for, you know, AGI or for actually replying to customers, to users is a different debate. But I mean, so essentially the companies, the organizations that make these systems, they choose a certain road that we're all bound to follow. But if different communities, different organizations, different individuals make different systems, the goals are different and the systems can be different. And so, for example, indigenous AI initiatives will have a certain goal in mind, like preserving indigenous languages, and general purpose AI systems are not the way to do that because there's not enough data to train a large language model from scratch. So you have to do other things. And climate modeling, as Yason said, is also not general purpose. It's a very specific model that will use physics-based constraints and hydrology data and geography data and what have you. And so I think it's worth bringing these two questions together, and how can a given community, like, for example, the community here, think about or create together systems that are not the general purpose ones that we've been mostly discussing this past week, but ones that imbue our values, that are smaller maybe and more efficient and more ethical.
I see Anat and Luc. Yes.
I can maybe give another small example. I unfortunately don't remember the name of the authors of this paper, but there was a paper that came out, I think, last year that used large language models for getting to common ground. And I thought that would be something interesting to the people in this crowd, because we saw many examples about how it can be used to polarize each other and, you know, against others. But it really depends on what you're using these systems for, both as individuals and as the corporates who build them and who stand behind them. So I think we can definitely think of ways to use these and similar systems for ways that we learn to live together with each other better. And there are examples of that.
Yeah. If we look at biology, then one of the important lessons is the importance of diversity. And if there's not enough diversity in a species, I mean, there's a very high risk that the species will collapse because there's not enough possibility to cope with new circumstances. And I hear, this is not just here, but you know, the idea of we need one model, for example, one universal model, or we need a common ground. I think, first of all, it's impossible to do because the languages are really different. And you only know that if you learn other languages, but from other language families. But even if we go within the same language family, there are very important differences on how you conceptualize the world. And then, of course, you have the words, but it's the conceptualization. For example, the cultures that would say the past is before us, you know, and the future is behind us. They say that because you cannot see, well, you can see the past, but you cannot see the future. Whereas in, I don't know, in English, you know, the future is before you, right? And the past is after you. And this is just a tiny example of the conceptual differences. Now, to press that all in one model is just impossible. And it's also not good because you kill diversity, because conceptual schemas are ways to organize the world. So just like in biology, you don't want a monoculture for, let's say, intelligence. For language, we want multiple cultures. Now, then you will say, okay, then we get to problems of polarization and all that, and not understanding each other, right? But that's where I think the respect and compassion and all those things comes in. It's a matter of respecting the differences in language and say, let's try to understand each other, but it will not just be a matter of, you know, talking the same way, but we try to reconceptualize from each point of view, and we respect each other's point of view. So I think both also from an economical point of view, if you get a monopoly, you know, that is killing epistemic diversity. And so we need to foster diversity. And I think it's entirely possible that, you know, the technology develops to a certain point that communities can develop their own language models. It's a matter of building tools and shrinking the technological cost, let's say, energy and all of these things. And that's technological development is pretty good in shrinking. I mean, if you look at the development of computers, you know, a room filled full of computers in, let's say, the 50s is now like on a chip, a microscopic thing that almost doesn't use any energy. And so I think that is a way for the future development is to think about how can these powerful tools, which now cost a lot of money and are centralized, how they can become decentralized so that, you know, we can all use them wherever in the world, and there's a diversity, but it's respected.
We have ended this Q&A session with the audience. Those who filed these questions on paper, thank you so much. It was really meaningful to go through this. And I would like to give the floor back to you, Luc. And I know we have half an hour, very short time, for a round of individual sharing from the faculty, each of you sharing your learning, your essence, your findings, or your questions for the future. And you have roughly 1.5 minutes each, and not so much. I know it's difficult.
Right. So the idea is that we go around. We can start from there and go like that. But please don't give talks of 10 minutes. Just focus on one single point that for you is really important and crucial.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so-
I'll be very brief. For me personally, it's been a hugely educational experience. As a novice, coming to the artificial intelligence with an awareness of its importance. So have the opportunity to listen to such diverse perspectives. It was truly a rich experience. And I also feel way more optimistic than pessimistic about the future. I do want to emphasize this, the slippery slope. I worry about the language, and my hope is that diverse voices like this will constantly bring the critical perspective to whatever stories that is being told. And I would like to take this opportunity to particularly make an appeal to the specialist journalists who are covering AI, to every now and then when they bring a hype, they also bring the other perspective, the critical perspective. So this is where ordinary people like us get to understand the progress. And then finally, I also hope that there are real efforts are made to find whatever ways, whether it is guardrails, whether it is at the designing stage, to really, as much as possible, put the kind of the more compassion, empathy, relational values, so that the ethics perspective is not confined just to the Western approach. Particularly the secular Western approach on ethics tend to be very individually defined, choice, freedom, autonomy, and so on. Whereas values like compassion and empathy are more relational, more communal. So my request again is to broaden the horizons of resources, whether it is in relation to defining consciousness or whether it is in relation to understanding what ethics is, as much as possible, broaden the horizons and do tap into the resources such as my own Buddhist tradition offers. That's my appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been so wonderful to be here. And, I became a scientist because I believe that science and technology can contribute to human flourishing. And I still believe that. What being here has helped me to articulate and understand better is that I don't actually see positive visions of science and technology and negative appreciations of risk and harm as separate or different. I think they're actually both essential, and we can't have one without the other. What's challenging is that confronting the risks and the harms is uncomfortable. And I think many of us have felt uncomfortable here in the past few days. That's appropriate. But we have this great gift of contemplative wisdom, one of which is to give us resources to sit with and be present with discomfort so that we can transmute it into compassion, into progress, into something better. And I'll just end with some words from my friend and teacher, Roshi Joan Halifax, who many of you know here. She writes, being present and giving care in the midst of a meltdown of mind or life can seed compassion. Our very physical and psychic vulnerability, if we allow it, shows us the path and the present.
What I've gotten out of this experience is some clarity about how we got into this mess with AI. That kind of resolve, the resolution, clarity, and also an increasing sense of resolve for myself, and I think for those of us here, that we need to start changing the way things are changing with AI. And we don't do that by sitting on a cushion. Mazu, the 8th Chan master, Chan lineage, was awakened from his meditation one day with his master in the yard scrubbing a stone against a roofing tile. And he ran out and said, "What are you doing making all this noise?" And his master said, "I'm making a mirror." And Bosser said, "You can't make a mirror out of a roofing tile?" And his teacher said, "What makes you think you can make yourself into a Buddha by sitting on a cushion?" It was the right motion, but the wrong materials. And I think that we're often in that position. But one thing that I want to say here is learning from one another and then committing to action. The Chan tradition is about sudden enlightenment. It can also be translated as readiness for enlightenment. It's the moment when your teacher has told you what to do and you bow to your teacher. The moment your forehead comes off the ground is sudden enlightenment. Let me demonstrate.
Anthropology. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. You're a really easy act to follow. I want to express my gratitude.
Had enough breakfast to get you.
I want to express my gratitude again to the organizers to be here and to be with all the folks that have given us so much to think about. On the education question again, the theme that I've picked up on and continue to learn from in our discussions it really is curiosity. The more we stay curious, the more we push ourselves to learn about the tools that we're being asked to use and we're accepting to use, the more power we have. So it's so interesting to me when I work with students, when we just cover the basics of generative AI, they start to understand what the tools actually do and they become much less magical. So if there's anything I can say is that I've seen the power of curiosity and want to continue to instill the power of curiosity as we use tools of AI to understand better about all of our interconnectedness. So thank you for having me.
And thank you all. So Bob just talked about curiosity. I will say something about wonder, a sense of wonder, which is the beginning of philosophy maybe, but maybe not only philosophy. Maybe the learning practice in general. And I think that we have faced moments where in maybe some kind of discomfort or some kind of surprise, we have learned a lot from each other. And what I really appreciated is the storytelling that has unfolded here, interweaving different stories, bringing complexity on the center stage. And really we are, as human beings, we are storytellers. So we learn through stories, we transmit experience, lived experience through stories. We come together and talk about stories and listen to stories. So I think we can keep doing that also after those wonderful days. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be in this conversation and for your attention. I want to pick up on what Molly was saying about the discomfort of thinking about the various harms that are being done now and put that together first with our remarks earlier about none of this is inevitable. And I've heard over and over again, it's here to stay. And I want to complicate both the it and the stay in that. So we certainly have problems now, and they are coming about from many sources, but one of the sources is the practices involved in the companies that are being done in the name of AI. So if it can refer to all of that, I'm comfortable with it. Here, yes, to stay only if we let it. And what's giving me a lot of hope in this conversation is hearing about compassion and interdependence. And I do really strongly feel that that is an important way forward. But the place that we need to look to embed those values is not in the technology, but as Jimpala was saying during his presentation earlier, in the broader systems that we are building the technology within. And one last remark before I pass the microphone on. The scholar Chris Gilliard refers to many of these technologies as technologies of isolation. And there's something that we can all do right away as a pushback against technology of isolation, and that's connection, which we're doing. And thank you for letting me be part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, it was also a thought-provoking meeting, and I'm left more with questions like, can AI help us infiltrate our minds with compassion and care and maybe some slowness? Is that possible? Like, even though normally these systems tend to push the speed, but I mean, we are also part of the systems. We are making the systems. We create the data that forms these systems. So is that possible? Or can we maybe like configure the systems, the AI systems, to help us see different viewpoints? To maybe even these systems can use the language that one of my ballet teachers likes to use, and I think it's very powerful. She's like, can you try to, what happens if, if the systems, if the large language models would use that language rather than presenting information? I'm wondering what would happen.
Thank you very much. So it has been really wonderful and meaningful to be here. Thank you so much to all the organizers. Just zooming out, we are here in Dharamsala, in this extraordinary place, and I was really deeply moved to visit a couple of times the museum and to revisit the life of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. The Gyatso was really, really moving. And I was thinking that, all the struggle and what the Tibetan people have struggled, actually, this is through those struggles that they, especially His Holiness, have been like diving even deeper into the Buddhist wisdom, into the contemplative wisdom. So I think this is an extraordinary example. I think now the age of AI comes as a huge challenge, but it also, since we are here, it is actually an exhortation to go deeper into Buddhist wisdom. So I think like following His Holiness on that path, and I really appreciated what Richie Davidson said. I think this is what we now need to find new ways to bring contemplative wisdom and using that form of technology. I think that another element that we have not explored much is geopolitics. There is a considerable geopolitics of AI, and in the new, during the Cold War, we're talking about mutually assured destruction. And everything has been weaponized, and AI is being weaponized. So I think, again, facing that possibility, this morning we're walking on the Kora, we're having a nice discussion, and suddenly a monkey came and, wow! And that was like, whoa, like, be present. And it just stayed cool after, right? But I feel what I'm trying to say, that this comes also as a wake-up call or as an awakening call. So let's do our best. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah. So for me, when I first get the invitation to Mind, I love Mind Lab dialogue. So there's no even it's so a little bit busy, but I like dialogue. So I'm asking, why I love it so much, because this dialogue is we hear the history of Mind Life from Jambela and from Susan and from Genjimbala. So Mind Lab dialogue carrying His Holiness first commitment. So His Holiness has 4 commitments, and the first commitment is promoting human value. So this dialogue, this space is really, everyone, bringing the challenges and talking about challenges. And then also, putting a lot of it's sort of like implication, what we can do, what we can develop, and especially about our compassion tradition. So, I think back to 40 years ago when the first Mind Life dialogue started, and then maybe 10 years ago. And then the word mindfulness, and especially compassion, I think it's very rare to use. But through this platform, right now, many places and the car, and you can see compassion, even the word. And then this year, many places, people are celebrating the Compassion Year. So those are the fruit of this dialogue, this kind of dialogue. So I'm personally thank you so much to creating this space, and all the donors and participants and lecturer and organization and online participation. Thank you so much.
Yeah. First of all, it's a beginning to sharing. This is the great sort of honor to celebrating for His Holiness 90 years birthday, which is also a year of compassion, which is really kind of, to me, is sense of everyone is taking sort of like trying to do one way to another, trying to, whether we talk about the technician or philosophers, whatever. One goal is how can we taking to positive way. This is I can feel totally, we all, whether, the speaker or listeners, everyone kind of share, which is really feels too grateful and that thing. And the second thing is, I learned so many things and also many questions, and also really wanted to know more about that. As I quoted it, I don't want to believe, I don't want to more understand. So I kind of wanted to everyone, what we'll do next, what do we come next, sort of that aspiration keep alive. Thank you very much.
For me, it is, pretty much the same what Geshe said. It has been extremely educating. When I was thinking about what kind of the implication AI may have, and my, knowledge is very limited. I was mostly concerned about how it can impact negatively or inner growth. Then, from the, different kind of, the presenters talk about its negative implications on, the social bias, and then, the sustainability of the whole, ecosystem, and at the same time, its usefulness. So for getting opportunity to expose this kind of, the different perspective is, always memorable. And it really brings, more curiosity, to engage and to learn more. And then another one, what I wanted to share is pretty much, what Geshe Thöpke said. It's the same. And when most of, all of you, come mostly, focusing how can we mitigate the possible kind of, the adverse or negative sort of, that come in different level through the AI, and how we can collectively, work together and to, improve and redirect this kind of progression. So this is really, giving me some kind of emotionally, emotionally some kind of, the hope, and what I really wanted to say is that, as the technology, progresses, AI kind of advances, and it comes, in every, aspects of the human life. What we really need to be careful is we, should not forget the inner flourishing in that kind of progression, and keep reminding for all the time. I think that is very important.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there are two things that I would like to say. I think we had a fantastic meeting, and now a good talk or a conversation always has two parts. One is the speaker, and the other is the audience. And I think the reason why we could have all these great panels is also because of you, the audience. And when we sit here, we feel the energy, we feel, and this helps us to kind of go beyond ourselves in a way. So I would like to invite the other faculty members to applaud the audience. The second thing, for me, the take-home message is that I now believe firmly that because the, let's say, Tibetan culture has been, in a way, able to survive and built on centuries of thinking about the mind and thinking about living together and so on, that there are seeds there. It's almost like, a species that has been living and can be now medicine for the rest of the world. And so in this case, there are many ideas. For me, this is relatively new, actually, and I have to learn a lot. I came to learn more than anything else. And so we talked about the monastic debate culture, but there are many ideas also about the functioning of mind that I think can be a great inspiration for future AI. And this is, I hope, certainly myself, but we can collectively go further in that direction. For example, about attention processes, about mind wandering, about different khandhas, all these ideas, I think, could push AI in a new direction. And so this is my hope, that this meeting will be remembered as a starting point for that kind of new direction of the field. Okay.
Well, it's been an enormously enriching experience for me, and I'm terribly grateful for the invitation. Takeaways: the monkeys, the cows, and the dogs, who all live free and among the people peacefully. And I think that's an absolutely wonderful thing. And I'm sure it's a metaphor for something, but I'm not quite sure exactly what. And making new friends. It's been a real pleasure to get to know Sangpo, Tepke, and Choyang, and to talk philosophy with them. That's been wonderful. Thank you very much. And I hope we can continue to do so. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let me just repeat all of the appreciation that everyone else has expressed. I can't do any better. I've been learning quite a bit listening to all of the panelists. This morning's panel on education made me think about something we mentioned earlier on, and that is to be careful how to distinguish different types of artificial intelligence. And that made me think of a kind of artificial intelligence that we've been living with even before the 1950s, maybe for a couple thousand years, and that is writing. Writing is a kind of artificial intelligence. It's something we invented, so it's a kind of artificial thing. It holds our intelligence in some way. It allows us to express and communicate. And at the very beginning, well, not maybe the very beginning, but at some point, Plato raised some worries about writing and maybe the similar kind of worry about all civilization will come to an end with writing because it'll destroy the oral tradition that we have, which is the basis for our educational system. And it'll put people out of work, like the rhapsodes that would have to repeat what the poets said. So Plato didn't see that it might create work also for scribes, I suppose. But also look at what writing has given us. And what is AI, except in a certain way, another form, sophisticated form of writing. Maybe we have to wait, not wait and see, but maybe we have to wait in a critical fashion, worry about it as Plato worried, but also hope that perhaps it might take us places where we can't even imagine yet. So thanks again.
Well, first of all, huge thanks for the invitation and for all the conversations this week. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't only the panels, but really the times in between from the breakfast to the evening. And there were a lot of joyous moments in those conversations as well. So it's very different to my usual travel schedules, when I'm like fly in, speak out, and I don't get to have those moments. I don't get to talk a lot. So it was a really interesting experience. Appreciate it. The second thing I want to say is I'm kind of stuck with what Geshe Sangpo said in his presentation, that LLMs smooth they reduce discomfort. And I think when we talk about dialogue, we need both, right? We need that discomfort of what is happening negatively, how it is impacting us, but also looking ahead. And in that sense, looking ahead, I want to reiterate what I mentioned in my call on collective action. Regimes change, governments collapse, companies transform, all because of collective action. History is a story of collective action. And collective action of the people, not experts, but the people who really day in, day out feel the impacts, getting together for a single purpose and making change. And I feel the energy in this room, and I would love to see one way or another in each of our own ways, bringing that collective action into that future that we want from AI systems. Thank you so much.
I have learned so much this week from everyone here and from discussions in the panels and outside the panels and really every hour and every meal. And I'm so grateful for all of this. And I started with wanting to say that the most inspiring for me discussion that I've had was in one of the first days on Coffee with Merve about collective action and the power that we do have against these forces where we have these narratives that we think we'll never be able to change. It's bigger than us. And she convinced me it's not. But since you just said that, I'll say something different that I am also thinking about a lot lately. And I've heard it from different philosophers lately, so I don't know who to ascribe it to, which is this saying that AI is like philosophy with a deadline. And I think what this means is that both in the Buddhist tradition and in the Western tradition, people have been thinking about these philosophical questions for thousands of years. What do we value in human life? What are important ethics? What do we value in human relationships, in compassion, in work, in intelligence? What is consciousness? What is mind? But these times are making it crucial to think about these questions and to understand what we value in them and what we want to keep and what we want to hand over and who has the power to control these things. And I think this is a very powerful phrase or analog to think about, so I want to leave it with you as well.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a tremendous privilege to be here with you all, and I've deeply appreciated everyone's contributions. And I think my reflection builds upon what Anat just said in hopefully some promising ways, which is one of the things that has really come through to me lucidly as part of this joint activity is the value of intercultural philosophy and interfaith philosophy. And there's been innumerable moments during the week where I've been like, wow, isn't that amazing that people in a different time and place had a similar idea, but often it is with like a slightly different valence. And so just to give one example, Jinpa gave this wonderful quote where he said, "Compassion is a sense of concern for the well-being of others with special attention to the vulnerable," right? And in Western philosophy, when we think about justice, one very prominent vision says we should try to build societies that give the greatest attention to the least well-off person. But when you read that in a philosophical textbook in the West, it often seems like a thought experiment or something that's very dry and very analytic. And I don't believe that's what it is. I actually believe what these are experiments with compassion and experiments with love. And I think following the kind of the direction that His Holiness provided, it is this connection of wisdom with compassion that gives us the motive force to move forwards together. So thank you very much.
I'll repeat the thank you, but also I want to echo what Luc said. Maybe I was invited as a speaker, but I came as a learner.
And I've always thought that we have so much to learn from Buddhist scholarship and philosophy and tradition. And I think as I was listening to these last couple of days, always in the back of my mind was like, how can I integrate this into what I do on a daily basis? And a lot of what I do is working with developers. So I work at a startup, and it's often people who take models, AI models, adapt them, deploy them. And a lot of what I do is, for example, telling them, well, think about the impacts, think about deploying your model, and think about who's going to impact. And I think that maybe now I'll say, use your compassion to think about exactly, like, for example, things like bias, things like toxicity, instead of just going through kind of your head, use your heart. And I think that it will resonate. And also when I talk to users of AI, I try not to say don't use AI, but I try to say use AI thoughtfully. And I think that maybe now I'll say mindfully, because often, we want to do something and we go to whatever tool and say, well, I'm going to use ChatGPT. We like picking on ChatGPT for this particular thing, but we don't think about the other options or the non-AI options or, the other technologies that are available. And I think that mindfulness can be a big part of that. And it's something that we spoke a lot about today. So thank you for all the learning experiences.
I was sitting here thinking about what I was going to say, and I realized largely what I have learned from this experience is emptiness, because I have had the blankest mind I've ever had in my whole life. But I suppose random thoughts are that I've never been very impressed by intelligence as a concept. It's particularly as a philosopher, you meet some people who are often described as very intelligent, as geniuses, and they can be quite disappointing people. No one in this room, let me say. And one thing that has always really attracted me about the enactive approach is it has a much richer view of mind. And as someone who works in that approach, Mind in Life has been a really interesting sort of peripheral thing for me. So it's a real thrill to be here. It's also been really exciting to learn more about the Buddhist roots of that approach and how much they resonate with how I happen to see the world, I think as a result of that history that I was not so aware of. And I kind of want to leave, obviously thanking everyone. But there are various philosophers who have inspired me in this tradition because they're very intelligent and impressive, but also because they're very compassionate. One of the reasons I'm here is because philosopher Mog Stapleton was supposed to be here, but can't be here. And she's a brilliant and very compassionate philosopher, so I'd like to thank her too.
Yes, thank you all so much. And once more, a big applause, please. So now I would like to invite Suzanne to say some farewell words, and I'm going to do the same after you.
So could we begin by saying thank you to Gabor for holding this process and this faculty? So beautifully, so democratically, so gently, so thoroughly. Thank you. Yes, so beginning with the planning, so that's, again, Rob Roser, thank you so much. You've not been on the stage this time, but you're behind the scenes and bringing this to life, this new way of doing dialogue and testing the waters and being open, and I just wanted to name that. And Amy Cohen Varela for sharing wisdom, candidly and creatively making all of this possible. Thank you very much. Something I forgot to do on the first day is to thank the Mind in Life staff and the Mind in Life Europe staff. This has been so smooth. If you don't mind, just stand up just for a moment, please. Derek, stand up. Where's some of the other Mind and Life staff? All the local staff, Mind and Life. All the AV people. Oh my goodness. The Dalai Lama Library and Archives. Just wow. Thank you so much. The experience here has been seamless, easy. We haven't had to worry about anything. It's all just happened, maybe except for the monkeys from time to time. Exactly. So just feeling our founders in our hearts just for a moment. The energy of those 3 individuals breathing all of this into life. And dedicating any future action and merit to those founders in this moment. Thank you so much. It's been a privilege.
So I would like to give.
I'm gonna stand there. I'm a surprise. I'm a little. This wasn't planned. So Luke, you talked about this as being a starting point, and I just wanted to say that now that we've come to the end of our meeting, I'm thinking of it too as more of a commencement than as an ending. A commencement that is a start of many new friendships and unsuspected collaborations, and hopefully some action. It's also a commencement in a profound sense that I'd like to highlight, and that's why I kind of kidnapped this. It's been our first dialogue without the physical presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I thought I'd like to mark that moment with a little tremble in my voice. But actually, he's been with us every minute. I think everyone agrees. I see Susan nodding over there. In our hearts and all through the voices, the hearts and the minds of the contemplatives, the monks and scholars who have joined us and to participate, who've accepted to participate with us in both the preparation and in the dialogue. And I want to also mark that for this really precious presence, we have Jimpas carrying attention to the preparation of this meeting to thank. Jimpa. Jimpa has been a gentle bridge for our dialogues for over so many years and in so many ways. And for this, I'd like to extend a special, very special, there's got to be another word for special, very, very special. Thanks to you, Jimpa, for your constancy and your karuna.
Is it on? Yeah. Before thanking and expressing our gratitude to our host and giving the floor to Champella, I would like to express my gratitude to the spirit of questions. Expressing gratitude to the spirit of questions and the spirit of not knowing. That we come up with a lot of questions, a lot of answers, a lot of presentations, a lot of talks. And as many of you said, we leave with a lot more questions than we came here with. And probably that's normal. That's what makes us human, at least in my understanding, that we have questions, not only prompts, but questions that are left unanswered. And as we are in India, besides the Tibetan tradition, I would also like to highlight the importance of the Indian spiritual tradition by referring to a very ancient text, the Rig Veda, and its creation hymn that was composed, according to scholars, 900 before Christ, so almost 3,000 years ago. And this creation hymn, the Nasadiya Sukta, is very, very important to me personally, and I would like to just read this sukta and there was neither non-existence nor existence then. There was neither the realm of space nor the sky which is beyond. What stirred? Where? In whose protection? Was there water, bottomlessly deep? There was neither death nor immortality then. There was no distinguishing sign of night nor of day. That one breathed, windless, by its own impulse. Other than that, there was nothing beyond. Darkness was hidden by darkness in the beginning, with no distinguishing sign. All this was water, the life force that was covered with emptiness. That one arose through the power of heat. Desire came upon that one in the beginning. That was the first seed of mind. Poets, seeking in their heart with wisdom, found the bond of existence in non-existence. Their cord was extended across. Was there below? Was there above? There were seed placers, there were powers. There was impulse beneath, there was giving forth above. Who really knows? Who will here proclaim it? Whence was it produced? Whence is this creation? The gods came afterwards, with the creation of this universe. Who then knows whence it has arisen? Whence this creation has arisen? Perhaps it formed itself, or perhaps it did not. The one who looks down on it in the highest heaven, only he knows, or perhaps he does not know. Thank you. I would like to invite Gianpella to say the final words before we end the program with meditation. Thank you. Gianpella.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we come to the close of these 3 wonderful days of the 39th Mind and Life Dialogue, I would like to take this moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who made this gathering so meaningful and inspiring. Over these past days, we have witnessed truly enlightening presentations and discussions. Our panelists have beautifully balanced modern technology and ancient wisdom, helping us reflect on how both can serve the betterment of humanity. I hope each of us leaves this dialogue with a deeper sense of understanding and renewed inspiration to carry this vision forward. On behalf of Office of His Holiness Dalai Lama and Dalai Lama Trust, I would like to extend my deepest thanks to the Mind and Life Institute and Mind and Life Europe for organizing this remarkable event. A special note of gratitude to Suzanne, the president of Mind and Life. Gabor Karsai, Mind and Life Europe Managing Director, for their leadership and dedication. And to Ellen Klenner, who has been the true backbone of this event, ensuring that everything ran so smoothly and gracefully behind the scene. Our sincere appreciation also goes to those supporters whose generosity made this dialogue possible. I would also like to offer my heartfelt thanks to my dear friend, Buddha Jibala, a founding member of the Mind and Life Institute. He is the only person who has been present since the very first Mind and Life Dialogue held in Dharamsala in 1987. And since then, he has been truly instrumental in carrying forward His Holiness Dalai Lama's vision of uniting science and spirituality for the benefit of the beings. Our gratitude extend to all the panelists who shared their deep insights and experiences with such clarity and compassion, enriching these 3 days of dialogue. And finally, a warm thank you to the Nobel Institute for kindly providing delicious lunches for all participants throughout the 3 days. Your hospitality added a beautiful touch of community and care to this event. As we close the 39 Minor Life Dialogue, let us carry forward the wisdom, warmth, and inspiration we have shared here to continue building bridges between knowledge and compassion, science and spirituality for the flourishing of humanity. Thank you all.
And now we have reached the final program before, of course, concluding today and tomorrow with more ceremonial activities. We would like to ask the 3 monastics faculty members, Geshe Sangpola, Geshe Tapkela, and Anichoyang, to lead a meditation that we will experience together with them. And the faculty is leaving the stage in the meantime.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think beginning I would say a little bit something, and then mainly Geshe Sangpola will lead, and then at the end, Anichoyang. So I would like you to stand up, just exercise. Feel free, any of stages, whatever you like to do. Maybe you can dance, whatever you like to do. Kind of because since we stay quite long. Yeah, just a minute to do these things, whatever. Feel free. Okay, please sit down. Whatever you're comfortable to sit down. And I would like to forget about everything what we discussed, whether they are talking about the AI, BI, CI, whatever things. Just forget about that at the moment. We need re-energy. That's things. So yeah, yeah. And then traditionally, when you are doing meditation, I think important is take comfortable seat. And don't take serious meditations. Don't take serious. Just relax. And I think many of them get up early in the morning. Please feel free to take sleep. It's sometimes His Holiness says sleep is the best meditation. I know that it's 4 a.m. I couldn't do that until now. So feel free. Any of you like to sleep? It's a best meditation, I would think. So. Maybe we just a little bit, even though you are taking seat, but if you back side is a little bit pushing straight, that feels better to meditating. Usually I feel, And then focus on the just gentle breath, and then sometimes long inhale and the short exhale. Maybe you can think about when you exhale, what is wonderful weather we have? What is the wonderful place we have right underneath of His Holiness residence? Maybe you can feel His place is already around there. And also you can think about how much clear or energy from the tree or Himalayan mountains, and the essence of energy. You can feel when you inhale all the energy getting resolved into your body, and the release all the uncomfortableness. Just take 3 times again. Officially start now. Long in, short exhale. Okay.
In this stillness, in this presence, I want you all travel back, all the way back to the moment of your birth. Now take a pause and think about this. At what point did you truly become a living being? What are the essential elements or the constituents or the condition that came together to make life possible for you? Just think about it for a minute. Maybe it is the genetic materials that we have been inherited from our parents. Or maybe it's more subtle than that. The spark of consciousness, the mysteries of meeting body and mind, making the collections of cells into a sentient being. There you are, a living being. Maybe that is how we got started. Now think about this question. Does the starting point I see now fully capture the origin of my life? Your story doesn't begin with you alone. The origin of your life stretches far back through your parents, your common ancestor. The countless conditions and causes came together the way back before you were born. Your life is not isolated. It is a continuation. A thread in a vast unfolding tapestries of interconnection. Now take a moment to consider how this very life, your life has been nourished mentally and physically. For the mental growth, cognitive and emotional growth. Starting from your birth, how our brain and our intellectual capacity, emotional growth has been taking places. Receiving so much information from your parents, from your friends, from unknown strangers, sources such like in news, in apps, different kind of social media, from your teacher, from your friends. We gain so much. And for the emotional growth, the care receiving from your family, friends, strangers, through sometimes having some kind of struggles, conflicts, exercising or emotion, strengthening or resilience. Now think about your body, physical body, how it has been nourished. Receiving nutrition from different sources of foods, in your breathing air, in your drinking water, and the warmth of the temperature, and the ecosystem that is compatible for our survival, to live a life. You are more than yourself. The whole universe lives within you, every breath, every heartbeat, every moment, sustained by the countless force beyond your control. At the same time, you can see yourself reflected all around you, in people, animals, in trees, rivers, in sunlight and wind. You appear in moment of joy, in moment of sorrow, in the mysteries of birth and the stillness of death. You are not separate. You are part of the great wave of life interwoven through the universe. Now pause for a moment and think about your identity that you have brought up in here in interaction with other people. Your ethnicity, your profession. If you truly look from wider and deeper kind of perspective, the sense of I softly get dissolved into more larger of whole. What remained is spacious, boundless, a quiet awareness. That sees the interconnectedness. That you are both a single wave and the ocean, the vast ocean itself. Now think about in any kind of achievement. We think we did so much by ourselves, but there isn't any achievement or accomplishment without other people's involvement. Everything comes from the other through the collective effort, through the interconnectedness of this reality. Now which generate sense of gratitude.
Yes. Thank you. Just pause a moment and think how lucky we are. And touch on your chest and tell yourself how lucky I am here. How lucky I am here. How lucky we are here in such a beautiful space. And with a good environment, good friends. How lucky we are getting this opportunity. And remember how grateful we are. Think this collective contribution and the presence of all these wonderful participants and panelists and collective energy. How lucky we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And that concludes 3 days of dialogue programming. It's fine, whatever's comfortable for you. I'd like to thank our guests here in the room, that in addition to our Mind and Life Institute guests and our Mind and Life Europe guests, we have several guests that are special invitees of the Dalai Lama Trust and the private office, the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We have representatives of educational institutions, including Tibetan Children's Village. So glad you're here. We have representatives of local monastic institutions. And we have the Tenzin Gyatso Science Leadership Association. So welcome, or thank you. I appreciate all of you being here. And to our live stream team again, to our live stream members that are joining us now, for those that are joining us in the future and are inspired by this dialogue, looking forward to what arises there. And I also want to give a shout out to our translators. You can imagine the job they had translating all of the panelists into Tibetan. So a special shout out to them as well. So thank you so much. And this concludes everything.